Hi, I'm Sarah Gonzalez. Welcome to the news and why it matters. We are here at the Daily Wire headquarters, and we are here with special guest Ben Shapiro.
Yay!
Yay! So thank you so much, first, for letting us use your space.
Oh, of course.
And also for being here.
And to tap your brain, too. I've got a couple questions for you on what the Kavanaugh thing.
Oh, yes.
So, Glenn, that is your top story.
Kavanaugh.
Okay, Stu.
Carson Wentz back for the Philadelphia Eagles this coming weekend.
That's not a top. No,
all right,
that's not a
Kavanaugh,
top.
fine.
Okay. Ben.
Across the board, Kavanaugh.
Okay, all right. We got a lot to get into there. Before we do that, I want to thank our sponsor, Nostalgia. Nostalgia has been a very long time Blaze sponsor. They've got so many different things. They've got the wild rice flour from the North Woods of Minnesota. They've got the pepper jams. They've got the beer jellies, which we've tried.
And the beer jellies, I mean, that sounds horrible, but it's actually really
It's really good.
It's like shocking.
I think, Ben, when he was at our studio, you smelled it. And it smelled really good, right?
It did smell good.
Yeah.
It's true.
So you can use the wild rice flour, and you can make waffles. I know they came to the studio and they made these chocolate waffles that.
Still waiting, Sarah. Still waiting for the waffles.
I don't know why you're talking to me. I feel like this is a very sexist comment that you're making.
No, I mean, it's.
I'm in charge of the food. I'm in charge of the food. Okay, that's fine.
You don't want to put us in charge of the food. It'll all be Taco Bell.
Yeah, I don't want to. That's true. Okay. So when you get Nostalgia, you've got it's healthy, but it's also really, really delicious. My son inhaled the waffles that I brought home whenever they came to the studio and made them for us. Right now, 10% of the proceeds go to Mercury One and the Nazarene Fund, so it's a win-win. It's really that simple. You can go to blazewildrice.com and you can donate 10%, help people, and also get delicious food.
Use the promo code HELP10.
HELP10. Ben, I want to get to you first and get your take on the Kavanaugh situation.
Well, it seems to me that there's no actual standard to which Kavanaugh is being held. So this is the problem with the Me Too movement since the beginning, is they've never made clear exactly when we have to believe. So is it when there's criminal liability? Because I'm with you. Is it when the story is credible with corroborating detail? Okay, I can go with you there. If it's believe all women, I can't go with you there because that's not a standard at all. In the Kavanaugh case, what we have is a woman who was unnamed, who made an unnamed accusation. Dianne Feinstein held it for 2 months. She didn't tell the other Senate Democrats about it. She didn't tell the FBI about it. She didn't question Kavanaugh about it in writing or in secret hearings or in the open hearings. She didn't ask any questions about it. And then she just leaked out a statement saying something happened, and an anonymous woman says so. And we're all supposed to go, oh, okay. And then the woman finally comes out over the weekend, and then the story she tells is that 36 years ago, she was at a party with 4 guys, 2 of whom took her up into a bedroom, turned the music up really loud. One of them, Kavanaugh, when he was 17, was lying on top of her trying to rip her clothes off and put his hand over her mouth when she tried to scream, and then she somehow escaped the room. The problem is she doesn't give you where this happened. She doesn't give you who else was there. There was no actual attempt to apparently tell anybody else at the time. So usually in a case like this, what you look to is, did they even tell anybody else at the time, so we can actually timestamp this and find out whether she was even telling the story.
Especially usually when you're dealing with teenagers, people of that age, they're going to tell one of their friends.
Right, exactly. Right? And this is what you saw in the Roy Moore case, right? The way that you could tell whether Roy Moore's accusers were more or less credible is they told a bunch of people around them, so you could at least timestamp that. They're corroborating details as far as location, for example, stuff that was happening at the time. This woman has said that sometime during a summer, she was involved in something. She won't give you a time. She says she doesn't know where the place was. She doesn't know how she got to the place. And so how is Kavanaugh even supposed to...
She can't even tell you what not only what month, but what year.
Yeah.
She doesn't know what year
She thinks it was around the end of sophomore years, right?
Around.
Yeah, she's saying like 82, I guess, is what she's claiming. But the problem is that in her therapist's notes, it says in one area of the notes that it was in her late teens. Well, she was 15 when this happened, supposedly. That's not late teens. So, and now I guess her lawyer is coming out and saying that there was a second woman present, which she had not mentioned at any point in the letter. It was not mentioned in the therapist's notes. It wasn't mentioned anywhere. So the first time she even says anything about it is 2012, which is already 30 years after the event. And, as somebody who's been in abusive situations before, I can tell you that over time, your memory of the abusive situation, number one, changes. But number two, the whole purpose of having a statute of limitations is so that we can actually investigate and verify objective fact about this stuff. Because witness testimony, just as a lawyer, witness testimony is the weakest kind of testimony because the brain changes how you think of things. And that's not even implying that she's lying. Right? That's just saying that objective facts are hard to lock down in the absence of circumstantial evidence, or at least in the absence of you telling anybody at the time. The first time this comes up is 2012 in a spousal counseling therapy session, and we're supposed to immediately go to Kavanaugh for sure did it. She's got every detail of this right. And now it turns out that Feinstein won't even allow this woman to talk to Chuck Grassley, right? Senator Grassley says, I want to talk to this woman and have a phone call with her. And she says, no. Well, then what exactly are the Republicans supposed to do? I mean, are they just supposed to dump Kavanaugh over a vague,
that's her
nearly
hope.
anonymous allegation?
Yeah, it's a Hail Mary, right?
Like, that's why the timing was the way that it was.
Here's the real problem. It's not a court of law. Well, okay, it's not a court of law, but it's civil law. Our laws are made to reflect what we have all felt as a society was fair. So, with criminal courts, it's beyond a reasonable doubt. I'm so far, almost 100% doubtful of this story. We're not even close to reasonable doubt. Preponderance of evidence in a civil case. The preponderance of evidence shows us nothing. She's got the absence is remarkable. The absence of corroborating evidence. But the other thing that really bothers me is if you're 17, 16, 17, 15, and you do something, you go to a juvenile court and you do your time, and those records are sealed because we believe that you do stupid things when you're young, and we don't hold that over your head for the rest of your life. If this is true, she never told anybody. He didn't pay a price because she didn't tell anybody. He was 16, 17, who knows how old. She doesn't even know what year it was. But we know he was underage. So if it would have been tried, it most likely would have been tried in a juvenile court. Let's say he was guilty. Those records would be sealed. Here's a guy who has lived his life, far as we know, from that day forward, cleanly.
Yeah.
How is it that we have any sense of justice in this country where we are crucifying this guy for something that is so far in the past, nobody knows it's true, it doesn't appear to have any evidence of it, and if it were true, and she would have stepped forward, it would be sealed so it wouldn't affect his life now. How is there justice?
Well, this is the other area that's so weird. Is in all of these Me Too cases, it's hard to think of a single Me Too case where it's gone to beyond a certain extent, where there weren't other women coming forward making claims. Right? There's been no other woman who's come forward making claims. The Huffington Post tried to put together a list of like 200 women who said that they believe her story basically just because they believe her story, not because they have any evidence that Kavanaugh did this or even knew Kavanaugh in the first place. So what we have here is an isolated accusation on the basis of no corroborating evidence, and the Democrats are saying, well, we're not even going to bring her in to talk about this. And if we do, let's do it, just down the line, just far enough that there's an election intervening so that we can use this as an election issue. Well, that sort of cynical maneuvering makes me less likely to believe the woman. I mean, Dianne Feinstein has done more to undermine the Me Too movement than anything else that's happened in this case.
Yeah, and the way this is unveiled itself, how can you not be skeptical about this? I mean,
2 months.
I mean, she had it for 2 months. There's just no way that you can put this down and say that there is something to act on here, at least not yet. And I think the whole Me Too situation has, as it has developed, and obviously there have been really good things that have come out of it. I mean, some people who are really bad have been shown to be awful. But I think so much of it has been looking backwards. So much of the focus has been looking backwards. These terrible men did these terrible things in the past. And I think if we could actually get something constructive out of this whole thing, beyond just punishing people who were terrible in the past, is to look forward and say, okay, we understand that in the 1970s, women may have felt that they couldn't come out, and they couldn't go to the police, and they couldn't report these things. Let's change at least that. Going forward, if you have one of these situations, go to the police right away. It's the only way we will ever know the truth about these situations. We have a legal system set up for a reason. And by the way, that reason is also to protect people like Brett Kavanaugh, whether he's guilty or he's not guilty.
That's why
the standard is high.
Proven innocent beyond a reasonable doubt. There's so much there was no reasonable doubt with Harvey Weinstein. There was none. There is reasonable doubt here, but way beyond reasonable.
And even in the court of public opinion, we do have to have some standard by which we can say Harvey Weinstein guilty, Duke LaCrosse not guilty.
Right.
But the way that this is going right now, there is none of that evidence. And what you can see about Duke LaCrosse and what you can see about UVA, virtually every case where there's been a rape accusation that's fallen apart has followed the same pattern. No corroborating evidence, no other women coming forward. Right? Duke LaCrosse, you had one single person who said that she was assaulted. There was no corroborating evidence that any of that ever happened. All the witnesses said it didn't happen, and she wasn't a credible witness, and that fell apart. In UVA, you had a woman who came forward and said stuff anonymously, and this became a huge scandal. It was one woman making one accusation. It completely fell apart. And when you see a case like this looks a lot more to me like UVA or like Mattress Girl at Columbia University than it looks like a situation with Harvey Weinstein where you got 8,000 women coming forward and saying he was molesting me in some way.
And the other thing that's consistent about all those cases is the left always believes them initially. They always believe them and push it and push it and push it and try to get an agenda through and say how terrible these people are. And when their lives have fallen apart and we later on say that they're all innocent, a friend of mine knew someone who was on the Duke lacrosse team, not even at the party, not accused of being at the party, but when they Googled his name, Duke lacrosse came up, and he couldn't get a job for multiple years after the whole team was cleared. You wind up killing these guys. I mean, Brett Kavanaugh is a guy who's, he goes through his whole life.
His life is ruined, basically.
Yeah, his life is ruined already. His kids are seeing him as a rapist.
Wait, but go back. First, his kids had to be removed from the hearing. It should have been one of the greatest memories of a child's life to see how the American system worked. They were removed because they were terrified. Now daddy's a rapist, too.
Well, this is how the Hollywood values that Democrats understand and Republicans don't really pay off for Democrats. I mean, HBO does movies about Anita Hill. There are some very, very serious doubts about Anita Hill's story.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
And they were all called into question at the time. Thomas Sowell was a big advocate of calling those into question. She admitted to telling lies on the stand in that particular hearing. And yet she is now treated as the case number one of heroism. That was a case where, she was brought up last minute after attempting to make an anonymous accusation. She was brought forward. There were a lot of holes in her story. But now the rewritten history is that Clarence Thomas, forever and for all time, will never be respected fully as a justice because the left has deemed that he is some sort of sexual harasser, even though, in my view, Clarence Thomas is probably the best justice of the last 30 years.
Can I ask you a question? And I see we only have a minute left, so I'll ask you the question, then you can answer on the other side. One of the things that bothers me, look, I've always said I want a president with a twitchy eye, one that, all of the enemies around the world are like, he's crazy enough to do it. I am to the point, I'm not a big fan of Kavanaugh. I don't know how he's going to vote. I don't think he's a strong constitutionalist. He's conservative and maybe he'll be good, maybe he won't. I don't know. But at this point, I really want the twitchy eye president to go, oh, really? You thought he was too extreme? And then just, here's Judge Andrew Napolitano. And really go for it. I'd love to hear your take on what happens next with this.
We'll find out back in a minute.
Yeah.
Got a lot more to get into, but before we do that, I want to thank our TV and podcast sponsor, Riduzone. Ben, you don't know this. These two gentlemen know this. I used to be like really fat.
She was a fat.
I was there. That was me, the number 10, the giant number 10.
Would you even recognize her?
No, that is unrecognizable.
Yeah,
That's
so that
crazy.
That was me. So I do know the struggle of weight loss and having to, watch what you eat.
Here's the
and everything
craziest
like
thing. That was me.
that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Many surgeries later.
Wow.
Many surgeries later. For some reason, he wanted to go the other way around.
Well.
But so Riduzone has really helped me. After I lost the weight, you still have the cravings, and we're addicted to outrage, but also junk food in this country. So Riduzone has really helped. It's basically the good molecule in olive oil that helps boost your metabolism and make you feel full. It's really worked for me. I can vouch for it. And you can get 30% off by using promo code TheBlaze if you go to riduzone.com. That is 30% off of a 3-pack of bottles, which is a 3-month supply. So you will be set for 3 months. You will notice a difference. Go to riduzone.com, offer code TheBlaze.
Okay.
Yes, so back to the cliffhanger.
Yeah, the cliffhanger is I want the one time I want the twitchy eye president is right now for him to step to the plate and go, really? Think he was too far? Try me.
Right, exactly. How about try Amy Coney Barrett?
Yeah.
See how this
Yeah.
goes. I mean, I wanted her in the first place,
Yeah.
and this would be a very different hearing.
I know that we've kind of danced around this whole abortion thing. We're not going to take away anybody's birth control for the love of Pete. But you know what? Abortion is murder of children. How do you like that? And just come.
I mean,
bring it.
I think that that's the direction that he'll go if Kavanaugh goes down. I do think that if Kavanaugh goes down, then he will go in the direction of picking somebody who is more likely to tick off the left. But because I think this was his conciliation pick. I think this is the guy he thought was like, okay, this is an establishment guy. He'll sail right through 65 votes, no problem. And then the left lost their mind anyway. And you had Cory Spartacus Booker doing his routine and Kamala Harris, doing her routine and everybody doing their tap routine. So I think that's where he'll go. But obviously, first principles suggest that at this point they have to stick with Kavanaugh because it's just the nature of the evil that is being promoted. If you cave on Kavanaugh before there's actual evidence that comes out that he's done any of this stuff is so crazy that they could do the same thing. They could do the same thing to Amy Coney Barrett, right? They could just make some sort of crazy accusation about Amy Coney Barrett. I was thinking about this the other day. Like, I am the cleanest person in American public life when it comes to matter sexual. Like, the cleanest person. I was the most famous virgin in America until I was married. So I am absolutely clean. Would that foreclose the possibility that some woman would come up from law school and suggest that something happened in a room? The answer is no. Of course it wouldn't, because if I got in a position of power strong enough, anybody can make any accusation, and there's no way to, if this is the standard now, there's legitimately no way to rebut the accusation.
So I was listening to the New York Times podcast with Bob Woodward the other day, and they were talking about anonymous sources. And he said, you got to have anonymous sources. We found this out with, Nixon administration, blah, 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 because people won't come forward. And I'm thinking to myself, yeah, but Bob, it requires us to trust the organization that is coming with the anonymous sources. And immediately, what's his name from the New York Times said, I know, and we're going to see more and more of those. Well, no, wait. Without the trust of the organization, anonymous sources, you're going to get all kinds of things that who knows if these are true or not?
And the only way that you would really be able to use anonymous sources in the way they're talking about is if you had several anonymous sources saying the same thing. I mean, you're right that the credibility is at stake because maybe the reporter's just making it up. Right. But assuming that the reporter isn't just making it up, what you really need, and I think Woodward usually tries to do this, is he gets two anonymous sources saying the same thing, right? He has two people in the White House saying Trump's a crazy person, and then he writes, this person said Trump's a crazy person, and that person said Trump's a crazy person. And you're like, okay, fine. Maybe he's a crazy person. Also, there's his Twitter account, so
it's not a big leap.
Right, it's not a huge leap. But with Brett Kavanaugh, who appears to be like the cleanest guy on the block, Catholic father of multiple children who helps out with his daughter's basketball team, to go from there's one woman who 36 years ago says something bad happened to her and she teaches at a college out in California and she has no actual details on the allegation, to, okay, well, we're gonna knock him out of the box.
Who wants this job?
Yeah, I don't know why you do it.
This occurred to me the other day. It legitimately occurred to me because I get asked a lot about whether I want to run for public office. Yeah. And I turned to my wife and I said, when I was younger, the answer was maybe. And now the answer is pretty clearly leaning no. Like, who wants this job? Yeah. I mean, it's a garbage job.
When we went out with Ted Cruz, I wasn't even the target but we got smeared by it. It's insanely stupid and corrupt. There's no way. There's no way anybody. No way I would run.
Only the most corrupt people will do it from now on, because they'll figure, okay, people know I'm corrupt, so what difference does it make if they call me corrupt?
Correct.
Well, corrupt people in Spartacus.
Right, exactly.
They'll run too.
It's one and the same, isn't it?
It's interesting because they set up this system where you don't need any evidence of an accusation, and there's literally no defense. When you I would love this. They always, the typical thing we see now is, television host, righteous television host comes on, some person who's defending Kavanaugh, and they get berated with question after question after question to make them look terrible. And how can they respond if the person says they didn't do it? You say, what are you saying? The victim is lying. If they say, I wasn't, I had nothing to, here's 65 people who knew me at the time, and they all had no experience. Oh, well, there's 65 people you didn't rape. Congratulations. No matter what you bring to the table. Hey, there was another person there. Well, let's talk to that other person. He says it didn't happen either. No matter what you say, you're either blaming the victim or you're lying or someone's covering for you. So you need no evidence, and there's no possible way to rebut the evidence that isn't there.
And I think that's the left's goal here. This occurred to me a couple of years ago, is that we all agree that raping women is a bad thing.
Yes.
Right? We all agree that, cops shouldn't shoot black people for no reason.
There's lots of steps
There's a lot of stuff in between
before we get to that.
This is correct. But what the left will do is they'll pick a situation deliberately knowing that there's a lack of evidence, so that when we say, listen, I think all this stuff is bad, but you're going to have to actually show that it at least probably happened in order for me to go along with you in this particular case, then the left says, well, the only reason you want that evidence is because you actually don't care whether a woman gets sexually abused or assaulted. In a case where a cop is involved in a shooting that is controversial, and we say, okay, well, if it turns out this is a racist shooting, then we'll condemn it alongside you, but we need some evidence. Then the left says, well, if you want evidence, that's just because you don't believe this stuff happens in the first place. You're part of the problem. And the left's urge to say that you are part of the problem is much stronger than their urge to actually create unity on issues where we actually have unity.
Right.
No one in the country, and I really mean statistically no one, there are maybe 5 people in the country, actually think it's okay to lie on top of a girl, try to remove her clothes, and put your hand over that person's mouth. No one thinks that's an okay thing. But the left's entire suggestion is that, and they've been saying this openly, that if you are a guy who says, I need evidence that happened, then you must actually think that that's okay. There was a female journalist who was suggesting, and this is repeated by the left, well, how could the Republicans even call this alleged victim and then question her? Because all the people who would be questioning her are men. I just thought to myself, what the hell difference does that make? Virtually all cops are men, too, but they'd be the ones who would actually be investigating a rape case. So the suggestion is if you're a man, you can't ask questions because secretly deep down in your lizard brain, you're okay with the molestation of women?
So how important is it then that the GOP doesn't cave and that they do vote to confirm Kavanaugh as much as they can, just to show, just to show that we're not going to let mob mentality rule. We're not going to let you say, so just some random person says that it happened with no evidence, and yet it's going to stop our entire plan. I mean, do you feel like that's setting a dangerous precedent?
I think it is vital with all of the things going on, unless the evidence is there.
Of course,
if the evidence is there, then it's totally different. But it is vital.
Or even, can I just say, or even if it's more likely than not. Right?
Because it's beyond a reasonable doubt.
We said with Roy Moore. Let's say with Roy Moore.
Right.
I was pretty sure he probably did those things.
Me too.
Because you don't really you don't have any positive evidence, but the circumstantial evidence and the amount of women,
and his
it was enough. Right.
His
Bill
answers,
Clinton,
the corroborating details.
Right.
Yeah.
Bill Clinton.
And I asked their mothers. Oh, good God. Okay. He did it.
His answers did not
Beyond a reasonable doubt.
But with this one, I think that it's different, and it sets a very dangerous precedent if, the GOP lets the left get away with smearing this guy with absolutely no evidence.
Tell me one thing that is happening in Washington and in the media right now that isn't setting, and I would say Silicon Valley too, that isn't setting a major, massive, disastrous precedent. Yeah. Name one thing. It's everything, day after day after day. It's some other terrible thing. You're like, good God, this cannot continue. This will destroy us.
And the Supreme Court being down to this no-rules sort of gladiator battle is, at some level, obviously Clarence Thomas was there and Bork was there. There's been, examples of this. But, Sotomayor and Kagan got 63 and 68 votes. Like this sort of nuclear option, if you will, to take out Kavanaugh is a lot further than we're used to. And they'll argue Merrick Garland to their blue in the face, but Merrick Garland would have been voted down even if he got the vote. I mean, there was a Republican-controlled Senate, and the same things would have played out had that have happened anyway. The point is, though, this has got to be fair. It's one thing to come in here and make arguments and try to slow down with process and things like this, which is still nonsense. But to come out and try to destroy a man's life over something that I don't even think they believe it. That's really over the line.
All right, back in a minute. We are headed into overtime here in a minute, but Ben, tell us what you have going on with Fox.
Yeah, so I'm going to be doing an election special for the next 4 weeks, 8 p.m. on Sundays, the Ben Shapiro election special. So only I can host it.
Okay, so don't get sick on any of those days.
Right, exactly.
You're gonna be screwed.
But it should be fun. So we're going to have a panel, and we're going to have a hot seat guest. We're going to bring somebody on and question them. And I'm going to go through the topics the way that I normally do on my podcast, fast and as hard and fast as I possibly can. And I'm certainly not going to stop calling balls and strikes. So that's...
what's your prediction on the Senate?
I think we keep the Senate. I think Republicans keep the Senate. I think they lose the House. I think they keep the Senate.
Okay. And then we've also got, this is a book release eve.
Oh, yeah?
We've got Glenn's book coming out.
It's like Christmas. I mean, the fat man comes tomorrow, wearing his own book.
Yes. So pre-order it if you haven't already. Yeah. Addicted to Outrage. We've got lots more coming up in overtime, so stay with us.
So, are we doing the cigar thing tomorrow?
Yeah.